6 minutes. 60 million, or so in one explosive showdown in Congress. Jasmine Crockett took on Virginia Foxx before millions of viewers. But was this a debate or the start of a political reckoning? The Capitol was not quiet. It was holding its breath. Marble columns stood like ancient soldiers, their shadows stretching across the chamber. Every whisper, every shuffle of paper echoed too loud, as if the walls wanted the country to hear. The gavel struck, once, twice, 3 times. Less a call to order than a countdown. Cameras zoomed in, aides froze, reporters leaned forward. Across America, millions of viewers sat up straighter. Something was coming, and then Jasmine Crockett stepped into the light. Young, new, but her eyes told another story. Years of courtroom battles, nights spent protecting the powerless, scars carved into her stare. She did not just enter the chamber. She took command of it. Across the aisle, Virginia Foxx waited. A Republican veteran seasoned by decades of political combat. Her smirk was sharp, practiced, dripping with certainty. To her, Crockett was a rookie lamb led to slaughter. But Crockett didn't fold. She didn't sit. She stood there still, like a blade pulled from its sheath. Silence wrapped around her. Tighter, louder. The chamber began to shift. Smirks faded. Whispers died. A cough cracked the air. A pen clicked like a loaded gun. The gavel struck again, rattling desks and nerves alike. Crockett raised her chin, calm, unshaken, fire in her gaze. This was no debate. This was no routine session. This was the first strike of a war. Long before Jasmine Crockett walked into Congress, there was a Texas courtroom. The air inside was hot, the ceiling fans weak, and every sound echoed like a warning. At the defense table stood Crockett, young, determined, already carrying the fight in her eyes. Across from her sat a 16-year-old boy, black, scared, wrongly accused of a crime he never committed. His hands shook as he gripped the edge of the table, his entire future hanging on a verdict that felt rigged from the start. The prosecutor stood tall, voice booming with confidence, certain the jury would believe every word. The evidence was thin and bent, full of holes, but bias bridged the gaps. The jury's eyes carried doubt, not because of facts, but because of the boy's skin. Crockett rose to speak, and the room shifted. Her cross-examination hit like a hammer, breaking the state's case apart piece by piece. Every objection thrown at her was meant to silence her, but she deflected each one with precision. Her voice cut clean, her tone steady, her logic undeniable. Behind her, the boy's mother sat frozen, tears carving lines down her face, her hands clenched in prayer, her shoulders trembling with hope and fear. Crockett saw her, and in that moment, she felt the weight of every mother who had begged for justice and been denied. That moment changed everything. Crockett made a vow. If I ever hold power, I will not let justice be crushed again. It wasn't just a promise. It was a brand, seared deep into her heart. From that day forward, she was more than a lawyer. She was a fighter, a voice that would not be silenced. And now, standing in the halls of Congress, she carried that vow like armor. The chamber had no idea what kind of warrior they were about to face. Then came the voice that cut through the chamber like a blade. Virginia Foxx, Republican from North Carolina, a veteran of Washington politics, leaned forward with a smirk fixed across her face. Her reputation was well known. Sharp tongue, sharper elbows, a fighter who thrived on intimidation. The cameras caught her smile. It wasn't warm. It was a dare, a challenge tossed like a stone into the pit. With a mocking lilt, she leaned into her microphone. Give me examples. Give me data. Show me proof. Her words echoed, bouncing across the marble walls, drawing chuckles from her side of the aisle. To them, it wasn't just politics. It was sport. Watching a seasoned veteran toy with a freshman was entertainment. Fox fed on it, her eyes scanning the chamber for applause. But the lens of every camera turned not to Fox, but to Jasmine Crockett. The young congresswoman stood in silence, her body still, her breath steady. She didn't rush. She didn't stumble. She let the weight of Fox's words hang in the air until even the laughter began to fade. The chamber grew quieter, second by second. The silence itself became pressure, like a storm gathering before it breaks. Reporters leaned forward. Aides shifted nervously. Viewers across America sat frozen. And then, the cameras locked on her eyes. What had been calm now burned. Fire. Defiance. Not the gaze of a rookie shrinking from the spotlight, but the glare of someone who had been forged in fire, someone who knew the cost of silence and the power of truth. The gavel tapped once, but it didn't matter. The chamber was already electric. Tonight, would the lamb reveal itself to be a lion? The silence broke with a voice steady, sharp, and aimed like a spear. Jasmine Crockett leaned into the microphone, her eyes fixed on Virginia Foxx. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Every word carried weight. She began with the facts: 2019-2020 documented requests, letters sent by Democrats to the Department of Education. They had demanded enrollment numbers, revenue breakdowns, transparency. The record was clear, but the answers never came. Each request was stonewalled, blocked, denied. The chamber shifted uneasily. Aides whispered. Reporters scribbled furiously. Crockett pressed on, her voice tightening with controlled fire. "You asked for data," she said, eyes steady on Fox. "When we asked, your side raised the walls. You hollowed out the system, and now you pretend to demand the truth." Her words struck like hammer blows, each one shattering the facade of Fox's challenge. She reminded the chamber that it was Republicans who placed a Secretary of Education in charge with the mission to shut the department down. They gutted it from within, stripped away its power, and then had the audacity to claim Democrats were hiding the facts. Gasps rippled through the room. Some members leaned forward, others shifted in discomfort. The illusion of control wavered, and the camera caught the first crack. Fox's smirk fading, her brows tightening into a frown. Crockett did not stop. She spoke of taxpayer dollars, of schools propped up by vouchers, of children left behind while private operators cashed in. Her words carried the echo of every parent who had ever wondered why their child's future was traded for profit. By the time she paused, the chamber was alive with murmurs. The rookie had landed her first strike, and Virginia Foxx, the veteran, no longer looked untouchable. The veteran leaned forward, her smirk gone, but her voice sharper than ever. Virginia Foxx gripped the microphone, her tone rising like a whip crack across the chamber. "Public schools," she spat, "are nothing more than rat holes. We pour trillions of dollars into them, and what do we get? Failure." Her words sliced through the room, heavy with contempt. She unleashed the numbers like bullets. 45% of high school seniors scoring below basic in math, 32% falling short in reading. The chamber stiffened as her voice echoed. "Lowest in decades. America's children are falling, while China and India race past us." The venom in her delivery was unmistakable. Each word carried a sneer, each phrase dripped with scorn. She wasn't just arguing policy, she was painting a nightmare. The future of American education, she claimed, was a sinking ship, weighed down by teachers' unions and broken systems. The chamber murmured uneasily. Even the cameras seemed to lean closer as Fox drove her point deeper. She spoke of West Virginia, of a teacher holding classes with textbooks older than her students. Spines split, pages furred at the edges, ink collapsed into gray. "That's what union-backed schools give us," Fox thundered, "while families beg for options and are denied." Her words filled the air like poison gas, spreading fear, sowing doubt. Some members on her side nodded, others pounded the desks in agreement. The image was powerful. Classrooms crumbling, students trapped, futures destroyed. Fox leaned back slightly, but her eyes never left Crockett. She wanted the rookie to feel the weight of every word, to see the picture she had painted, a country in decline, bleeding talent, left behind by global rivals. For a moment, the chamber seemed to tilt in her direction. The numbers were grim, the story vivid, the fear real. Fox's venom had landed, but across the aisle, Crockett stood silent, her expression steady, her eyes burning brighter. The poison was thick, but she looked ready, ready to turn it back on the one who spread it. Jasmine Crockett did not flinch. She waited until the murmurs died, until Virginia Fox's venom settled thick in the air. Then she leaned forward. her voice calm, steady, deliberate, cutting through the fear like steel through smoke. The Department of Education, she began, is not here to write every test or dictate every lesson. Its purpose is greater. It ensures that every child, no matter where they are born, no matter their race, no matter their ability, has a chance at an equal education. The chamber stilled. Crockett's tone carried no venom, only conviction. She spoke of children with disabilities, students who depended on federal protections to even step into a classroom. She spoke of civil rights, of the duty to protect the most vulnerable when states and districts turned a blind eye. Her words painted a different picture, not one of decay, but of responsibility. Without the Department of Education, she said, who will stand for the child in a wheelchair denied access? Who will fight for the poor family shut out of opportunity? Who will hold the line when justice is ignored? She paused, her eyes locking on Foxx. Then softly but with force, she drew the image that lingered long after her words. A small light can hold a dark room at bay. That is what this department is. Not perfect, but a line that does not break. Reporters scribbled furiously, capturing the metaphor that hung like smoke in the chamber. Aides exchanged glances. The rookie had turned fear into fire, and her flame was burning brighter by the second. But storms are relentless, and storms strike back. How long can one flame resist the storm? The chamber lights dimmed, but the battle was far from over. Outside those marble walls, another war began, louder, dirtier, and more ruthless. Within hours, Fox's allies moved. Conservative media outlets clipped Crockett's words, slicing away context, twisting her steady defiance into nervous stammers. A moment of silence was reframed as hesitation, her calm gaze recast as confusion. Headlines raced. Out of her depth. Rookie lawmaker exposed. Tabloids devoured the spectacle, feeding their audiences a story not of courage, but of collapse. On talk radio, the laughter was rehearsed. She was lost in the weeds, one host sneered. Foxx ran circles around her. The clips played on repeat, stripped of Crockett's full argument, designed only to humiliate. Meanwhile, Foxx herself fanned the flames. In interviews, she wore her smirk like armor, retelling the clash as if it were a knockout victory. She couldn't answer, Foxx declared, shaking her head with mock disappointment. This is what happens when you send amateurs to do a professional's job. The strategy was clear. Bury Crockett under an avalanche of ridicule before her flame could grow. Allies in Congress piled on, parroting the narrative, repeating the same words until they sounded like truth. For Crockett, the weight was suffocating. Another phone buzz, another clipped headline, another cut video, another sneer. Her name trended not for the strength of her defense, but for the caricature her opponents had painted. But beneath the noise, something else stirred. People who had watched the full exchange saw the truth. They shared uncut clips, posted messages of support, calling out the distortion. Slowly, a countercurrent formed, small, fragile, but real. Still, the storm was raging, and Fox's machine was relentless. The goal was not just to win an argument, it was to brand Jasmine Crockett as weak forever. The marble chamber had tested her voice. Now the country itself was testing her resolve. The headlines stung, the ridicule echoed, but what haunted Jasmine Crockett most wasn't the noise outside. It was the memories inside. The storm pulled her back, past the marble halls, back to the dusty streets of Texas where she grew up. She saw her friends, children who never stood a chance. Kids with sharp minds but empty backpacks, left behind because their schools had no funding, no books, no hope. She remembered watching one boy, brilliant with numbers, slip out of school forever because no one believed in him. The system didn't fail him, it erased him. The ghosts of childhood pressed heavy. Each face a reminder of why she had chosen this path. Each silence from Congress now sounded like the same silence she heard back then, when no one came to help. And then another story surfaced, this time from Alabama. A family fighting to keep their daughter in a special education program. The funding was cut. The school told them there was nothing more it could do. The father worked double shifts. The mother pleaded with officials, but the door stayed shut. The little girl sat at home, staring at textbooks she could not read alone. Crockett closed her eyes and felt the weight of that story settle on her chest. It wasn't just the statistics or policy battles. It was lives, fragile and forgotten, slipping through the cracks. Her phone buzzed again with a new headline mocking her silence in the chamber. But in her mind, she didn't hear the pundits. She heard the cries of every parent, every child, every voice lost to the machinery of politics. If I fall, she whispered to herself, they lose. If I stay silent, no one will fight for them. The thought wasn't abstract. It was survival, theirs and hers. The storm outside was brutal, but the ghosts of childhood made retreat impossible. Crockett understood then, her flame wasn't just her own. It carried the weight of every forgotten child and every silenced family. And if she let it die, darkness would win. The storm raged, but then small sparks appeared. First came Maxwell Frost, the youngest member of Congress, stepping into the line of fire. He spoke with the same urgency Crockett carried, reminding the chamber that she was not alone. His words spread across social media, clips reaching thousands, each share another torch in the darkness. Then came the teachers. From West Virginia to California, they held up battered textbooks to their phone cameras, covers peeled, margins scarred, and said, "This is what Jasmine Crockett is fighting for." Their voices weren't polished, but raw, filled with the grit of classrooms held together with tape and faith. Parents followed. One mother from Chicago spoke into her phone, her child clinging to her side. "I saw what Fox said, but I saw Crockett fight, and for the first time, I believe someone is standing for my kid." Her video went viral, carried by thousands of other families who knew exactly what it meant to be ignored. And then the activists rose. Civil rights organizers, education advocates, even former students Crockett once defended. One by one, they stepped forward. They flooded the digital battlefield, challenging the clipped lies, reposting the full debate, demanding the truth be heard. The campaign Fox had built began to crack under the weight of this counterfire. For every headline mocking Crockett, another thread surfaced showing her strength. For every pundit's sneer, a teacher's testimony cut sharper. The tide was shifting, not in a roar, but in a steady current too strong to stop. Crockett felt it. In the quiet of her office, scrolling through the messages, she could see it forming. A silent uprising, not orchestrated by party lines, but born from people who had nothing left to lose. Their courage pressed against hers, feeding her fire, reminding her that she wasn't just one voice. She was carrying thousands. The storm was still out there. Fox and her allies still controlled the loudest microphones. But beneath the noise, something stronger was growing. But when the inferno comes, will allies stand or scatter? The chamber erupted. Virginia Foxx lunged at the microphone, cutting Crockett off mid-sentence, her voice sharp and unrelenting. The gavel slammed again and again, meant to restore order, and only multiplied the noise. Other lawmakers joined the fray, shouting over one another, their words colliding in midair. One voice called for discipline, another shouted nonsense, while staffers scrambled in the background, trying to contain the chaos spilling across the room. The marble walls seemed to shake with every yell. The chairman's gavel pounded so hard it sounded like gunfire, rapid and desperate. Yet nothing calmed. Each attempt at silence broke under the weight of Fox's interruptions, her tone dripping with disdain, daring Crockett to stumble. The air grew thick, suffocating. Sweat beaded on foreheads. Papers rustled. Chairs scraped. The noise piling into a single roar that drowned logic itself. To viewers watching live, it looked less like Congress and more like a cage match. But in the middle of the storm stood Jasmine Crockett. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. Her eyes locked forward, unwavering, burning like steel pulled straight from the fire. While others cracked under the noise, she became sharper, steadier, harder. Fox leaned in again, voice sharpened, her words aimed to humiliate. But every strike that should have rattled Crockett only glanced off the shield of her silence. She didn't bite. She didn't break. Cameras caught it, the calm in her face against the fury around her. One rookie standing firm while the chamber collapsed into chaos. It was not just defiance, it was endurance. The gavel slammed one last time, the sound echoing like a warning shot. The chamber was in flames, but Crockett was still there, unshaken, ready for the next blow. The chamber was still vibrating from the storm of shouts, but Jasmine Crockett stood motionless, her silence now louder than the chaos that had swallowed the room. It was the kind of silence that unnerved veterans, the kind that carried weight. She let it hang, drawing every eye, stretching the tension until it felt like the walls themselves were leaning in. Then her voice struck. "You claim to care about black children?" The words landed and stayed. "Virginia Foxx, show me one bill, just one, that you have ever written for them." The blow was swift, surgical, and lethal. Conversations died in their throats. The gavel froze mid-air, its wielder suddenly powerless. The roar of the chamber collapsed into a suffocating stillness, a silence thick enough to choke on. Fox blinked, her smirk faltering. She opened her mouth, but the rehearsed lines, the sharp comeback she had mastered over decades, refused to come. All that escaped was the sound of a breath, shaky and shallow. Cameras tightened, hungry for every flicker. At home, millions leaned in. They had seen battles in Congress before, but never this. A rookie cornering a titan, not with theatrics, but with a blade of truth honed sharp enough to cut through years of empty rhetoric. Crockett didn't smile. She didn't need to. Her eyes locked on Fox, steady and cold, like a soldier holding the line. Every second of silence after her demand was another cut, another crack in the illusion of Fox's authority. From the back, a cough tried to break the tension. A few papers shuffled. Someone whispered, but the words drowned in the heavy air. No distraction could erase what had just been spoken. "Show me one bill." It wasn't only a question, it was an accusation. It was history catching up, forcing accountability in front of the nation. Crockett had turned the tables, not with power, but with proof of its absence. And for the first time in years, Virginia Foxx had no answer. Virginia Foxx opened her mouth, but nothing came. A stammer, a pause, the flicker of eyes searching for rescue. For the first time in decades, she looked small, stripped of her armor, cornered in plain sight. The cameras zoomed closer, hungry for every tremor. The nation saw not a warrior of experience, but a politician exposed, her silence louder than any speech she had ever made. The smirk that once dripped with certainty now trembled into a grimace. Fox's fingers clutched the edge of the desk, knuckles white, as if the wood itself might anchor her. But there was no anchor, no shield. Just Crockett's words echoing through the marble. "Show me one bill." The gavel struck again, desperate, hollow. Order was called, but the chamber didn't move. Lawmakers sat frozen. Staffers whispered nervously. Reporters scribbled furiously. Every pen struck a nail in the coffin of Fox's dominance. And then Crockett sat, slowly, deliberately, like a soldier lowering her sword after battle. She did not smile. She did not raise her chin in triumph. She simply sat, letting the silence around her roar louder than any victory speech. To those watching, it was unmistakable. The rookie had bested the veteran. One flame had burned through decades of stone. The image seared itself into history, a young congresswoman, steady and unbroken, while her opponent drowned in her own silence. But victories in Washington are never free. The chamber whispered with grudges forming, alliances shifting. In politics, defeat is never final, and victory is never without cost. What price comes with victory in a place built on grudges? The silence in Congress didn't stay in the chamber. It exploded outward, racing through headlines, talk shows, and social feeds. The clip of Jasmine Crockett's strike spread like wildfire, replayed on every screen, dissected in every living room. America was watching, and America was talking. In Ohio, an old man leaned toward his grandson as the news replayed Crockett's words. His voice was gravel, but steady. "Remember this woman. She fought when others stayed silent. Across dinner tables, barber shops, and church pews, her name became a spark of hope. But with admiration came anger. Inbox after inbox filled with venom. Anonymous emails spat threats. Letters arrived laced with malice, warning her to stop or pay the price. The same video that inspired millions made her a target for others who feared her rise. Cable pundits argued late into the night. Some hailed her as a truth-teller unmasking hypocrisy. Others painted her as reckless, a dangerous rookie who broke decorum. The divide split screens and families alike, but no one could deny it. Crockett's voice had pierced the nation's conscience. In classrooms, teachers replayed the clip to students, saying, "This is why truth matters." In offices, workers whispered about her courage during coffee breaks. On the streets of D.C., strangers stopped staffers to ask, "Is she really like that? Is she really that fearless?" And yet, in the quiet of her office, Crockett scrolled through threats stacked like bricks, each one colder than the last. Her allies reminded her she had protection, but she knew, the louder her voice, the sharper the knives aimed at her back. She had become a symbol. In America, symbols are shields and targets. Night fell heavy over Washington. The city still buzzed with headlines, but inside Crockett's office, the lights were dim, shadows stretching long across the walls. She sat alone, the silence thicker than the chaos she had faced hours before. Her mother's voice came back to her, soft but unshakable. "Don't ever bow your head when truth stands with you." Those words had carried her through courtrooms, through campaigns, and now through Congress. Yet tonight, even truth felt heavy. On her desk lay stacks of letters, some dripping with threats, others trembling with gratitude. She picked one, handwriting uneven. A student with a disability had written, "Thank you for standing up. People like me need people like you." Crockett's eyes lingered on the words, her chest tightening with something deeper than pride. She leaned back in her chair, exhaustion washing over her. She had stood tall. She had swung the sword of truth. But every victory left scars unseen. The roar of the crowd faded, replaced by the quiet knowledge that enemies never sleep in Washington. Her phone buzzed with another notification, another headline, another reminder that the storm hadn't passed. She pressed it face down on the desk and let the darkness breathe around her. For a moment, she wasn't a congresswoman or a warrior, just a daughter, a fighter, a woman carrying more than one heart should. Still, she knew. Courage demanded cost, and she was willing to pay it. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The chamber was silent, but the cameras stayed fixed. Jasmine Crockett rose slowly, her shoulders squared, her gaze burning through the lens, as if speaking to every kitchen table in America. Her voice landed like thunder rolled in steel. Justice is not a privilege. It is a promise. No flourish, no hesitation, just a sentence that split through the noise of politics like lightning through a midnight sky. The camera zoomed out, pulling her into the vast frame of history. One woman, one moment against the weight of an entire system built to resist her. And yet her words refused to bend. Across the nation, screens flickered with her image. An old veteran whispered to his wife, "That's courage I haven't seen in years." In a crowded diner, strangers paused mid-bite, watching her face as if it were a prophecy. In classrooms, teachers hit replay, letting her words hang in the air for their students to absorb. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She stood in stillness, a warrior who knew battles are never final, only carried forward. And in that stillness, her voice lived on, echoing like a bell toll that would not stop. The narrator's voice lowered. "Fox may have stumbled, but the fight is not over. These halls keep grudges more faithfully than truth. The question is no longer whether Crockett can endure, but whether America will answer." Black screen. Her words linger, glowing like embers in the dark. Will the next generation pick up the torch, or let it die? Courage isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about standing firm when everyone else stays silent. If you witnessed injustice, would you have the strength to speak up? Truth spoken without fear can shatter even the loudest lies, and silence is the only weapon that keeps injustice alive. If this story moved you, do not let it end here. Subscribe, like, and share so voices like Jasmine Crockett's carry beyond these walls. Join us here, where courage finds an audience and truth refuses to be buried. This story is crafted for education, reflection, and inspiration. It does not represent any individual or organization. Interpret, debate, and question as you will. But remember, the responsibility for how you use these lessons rests with each of us. Your turn. In the face of corruption and fear, Which force truly changes the future? Courage, truth, or unity? Tell us below.